Today, I'll explain the hidden messages, symbols, and shocking ending of The Substance.
The Substance.
A controversial film from 2024 that not only won Best Screenplay at the Cannes Film Festival, but also competed for the prestigious Palme d'Or. Just a heads up, this video contains spoilers. Elizabeth Sparkle used to be a top actress, even winning an Academy Award years ago. But now, at 50 and nearing a milestone in her life, she's hosting an aerobics show on a morning TV program. Unfortunately, on her 50th birthday, she's informed by the network president, Harvey, that she's being replaced because she's too old.
50. It stops.
Devastated, Elizabeth drives home only to see her billboard being taken down, or more accurately, ripped apart. And she's so distracted that she doesn't notice an oncoming car until it's too late. She crashes. Luckily, at the hospital, she's told that she hasn't suffered any serious injuries. But when the doctor cluelessly wishes her a happy birthday, the weight of everything makes her burst into tears. After the doctor awkwardly leaves, Elizabeth is left alone with a handsome male nurse, who mysteriously hands her a USB drive labeled Substance. When she gets home and checks it out, she discovers it's an underground advertisement for a black market medical product that promises to create a younger, more beautiful version of yourself through an injection.
One single injection unlocks.
After some hesitation, she decides to give it a try, and following the instructions, she retrieves the kit from a shady locker in a warehouse. The kit includes a simple set of instructions and some important warnings. The activator injection allows the person's younger version to emerge by tearing through the spine. However, the old and young versions of the person cannot exist simultaneously. Only one can be awake while the other is asleep. This cycle is strictly 1 week long. After spending a week as the younger self, the older version must take over for a week, while the younger version is sustained through an IV drip in a comatose state. The activator shot can only be used once, and the younger self must extract a stabilizer from the older self's spinal cord once a day to maintain its physical and mental stability. If this stabilizer is not taken, the younger version starts to physically and mentally deteriorate. The final warning in the kit emphasizes that the two versions are still one person, and ultimately, all responsibility lies with the user. It feels like the movie is warning us of an inevitable disaster. Elizabeth decides to take the shot, and sure enough, her younger self rips through her back and is born. This new version of herself chooses the name Sue.
I'm Sue.
Sue, full of energy and beauty, auditions for Elizabeth's now vacant aerobics show host position and gets the job easily, thanks to her stunning appearance.
You're hired.
Not only does she excel at work, but people everywhere are mesmerized by her beauty and charm.
Always smile.
However, the bright lights fade quickly, and soon Elizabeth's week begins again. The stronger the light, the darker the shadow. Elizabeth starts feeling emptier and more isolated, while Sue continues to rise to fame in the entertainment industry, meeting admirers and living a free-spirited life. Then, on the last night of her week, as Sue is about to spend the night with a man, she suddenly feels dizzy. Desperately searching for the stabilizer, she realizes she's run out of her doses. In a panic, and despite knowing it's against the rules, Sue extracts more spinal fluid from Elizabeth, giving herself another shot of the stabilizer. She manages to stabilize herself and successfully transitions back to Elizabeth the next morning. But as a consequence, one of Elizabeth's fingers now looks like that of a 100-year-old woman. Horrified, Elizabeth begins to resent Sue, as if Sue were someone else entirely. The next day, as Elizabeth refills her substance kit, she sits in a restaurant where she's approached by a hideously aged man. He reveals that he's actually the original body of the handsome nurse who gave her the USB at the hospital. He confesses that as time goes on, he feels increasingly lonely, and that the older version of himself has no reason to exist anymore. He warns Elizabeth to get out before it's too late. Elizabeth returns home and concludes that she can't abandon her old life. She decides to call a man who had shown interest in her, someone who liked her for who she truly was, and sets up a date. Just as she's about to leave for the date, Elizabeth catches a glimpse of a massive billboard featuring Sue's beautiful face promoting her show. She quietly returns to the bathroom, looks in the mirror, and sees herself, old, unattractive, and wearing outdated makeup. In that moment, everything feels meaningless. Instead of going on the date, she chooses to stay home, binge eating and drinking in isolation. As Elizabeth becomes more and more of a recluse, Sue's star continues to rise. Eventually, she's offered the prestigious role of hosting a live New Year's Eve broadcast, one of the network's biggest shows. Between magazine shoots, talk shows, movie offers, and the upcoming New Year's special, Sue's life is a whirlwind. She begins to break the one-week rule, extracting more and more spinal fluid to stay active, which accelerates Elizabeth's physical decline, making her look like a half-aged crone. On top of that, Sue appears on a talk show mocking Elizabeth's old aerobics show, calling it Jurassic Fitness. Enraged, Elizabeth trashes her home in a fit of fury. When Sue wakes up, she, too, begins to despise Elizabeth's pathetic existence. She spirals out of control, refusing to return to being Elizabeth, and extracts enough stabilizer to last 3 months. As the months pass, it's finally the night before the highly anticipated New Year's show. Sue feels her body start to fall apart after using up all the stabilizer. Desperate, she tries to extract more from Elizabeth's spine, but nothing comes out except pus. In agony, Sue has no choice but to return to being Elizabeth. The next morning, the day of the New Year's show, Elizabeth wakes up and looks in the mirror. She's horrified to see a grotesque, hunched-over old woman with no hair staring back at her. Furious, she calls Substance and orders the terminate shot, determined to eliminate Sue once and for all. Hiding her disfigured body beneath clothes and scarves, Elizabeth retrieves the terminate injection and administers it to Sue while she's asleep. However, midway through the injection, Elizabeth glances outside at the billboard promoting Sue's New Year's show and suddenly remembers it's happening that very night. In a panic, she performs CPR on Sue and barely manages to revive her. For the first time, Elizabeth and Sue are both awake and staring at each other. But their coexistence doesn't last long. Sue spots the half-used terminate injection and, realizing that Elizabeth tried to kill her, kills Elizabeth in a fit of rage. Without pausing to think, Sue rushes to the broadcast studio for rehearsal, but once she arrives, her body begins to collapse again. With no stabilizer and no way to revert to Elizabeth, Sue tries to hold herself together, but her fingernails, teeth, and even her ears start to fall off. Making excuses, she rushes home, remembering the Substance advertisement, "You can have a better version of yourself." In desperation, she finds the leftover activator shot and, ignoring all the warnings, injects herself again. Instead of creating a better version, though, a monstrous fusion of Sue and Elizabeth emerges, a grotesque creature, neither Sue nor Elizabeth. This new being, Monstro Elisa Sue, dons a mask made from a cutout photo of Elizabeth's face and heads to the studio to host the New Year's show. It all ends in a disastrous finale. Before I dive into the deeper meaning of the film and its ending, I'd like to ask for a small favor. If you're enjoying this video, please hit the like button and subscribe. It really helps small channels like ours. Now, let's get into the review. In the final scene, Monstro Elisa Sue's severed head rests on Elizabeth's star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, gazing up at the Milky Way in peace. The next morning, a janitor casually mops up the remains, wiping away what's left of Monstro Elisa Sue without a second thought. This symbolizes how Hollywood doesn't care about the actual person behind an actor, but only about their youthful beauty and the image they project. It's like how we go to a zoo to see the concept of a tiger with black stripes on orange fur. We don't care which tiger it is, just that it looks like one. When actors grow old and lose their beauty, they're no longer seen as valuable and are essentially discarded, like trash. The Substance isn't the kind of movie you mull over like Parasite or Matrix. The message is simple. It's a satire on vanity and our obsession with appearances. It mirrors real-life issues, like plastic surgery addiction, or the gap between the real you and the image you present on social media. But the true appeal of this film lies not in its message or theme, but in its execution. The Substance is bold and direct in its style, much more like Titan or Love Lies Bleeding than director Qualley Fagja's earlier film Revenge. If we were talking about handwriting, this film wouldn't be neat and tidy. It's more like bold brushstrokes made with confidence. As the movie spirals towards its catastrophic ending, the director's bold expressions and electric sound design create a sensation that leaves your brain buzzing. It's definitely not an easy watch for many people, but for others, the discomfort and shock are precisely what make it so compelling. The film uses extreme close-ups and confined sets to visually represent the protagonist's internal isolation. Elizabeth and Sue are not people who watch, they are thoroughly watched. The film's locations are extremely limited, mostly just Elizabeth's house, the route to the Substance storage, and the TV studio. This creates a sense of claustrophobia, highlighting that the world through their eyes is as restricted as a bird trapped in a cage. The focus isn't on what they see, but rather on how they are seen by others. This is emphasized in a scene where Elizabeth, enraged by her situation, throws an object at a full-body picture of herself, and the part that breaks is her eye. Again, this symbolizes that what's important isn't what she or they see, but how they are seen. The director uses multiple scenes to establish this binary, oppositional framework. The woman is the one being watched, and the man is the watcher. It's a simplified approach to convey the message, but some viewers might find this uncomfortable. One thing that likely enhanced the impact of The Substance was the perfect casting. There's no denying that Demi Moore is the ideal fit for Elizabeth Sparkle, especially given that she, too, experienced both the glory and downfall of being a major star. Even without considering this real-life parallel, Moore delivers an outstanding performance. When she transforms into the haggard, hunched-over old woman, her voice becomes chillingly grotesque. It's terrifying, but also impressive. Margaret Qualley, who plays Sue, also gives a captivating performance. An interesting fact is that she's actually the daughter of Andie MacDowell, famous for 4 weddings and a funeral. The relationship between Elizabeth and Sue could even be interpreted as a unique mother-daughter dynamic. So casting the daughter of a former famous actress as Sue feels like no coincidence. Dennis Quaid, despite his relatively short screen time, makes a strong impression with his repulsive portrayal of the network president. The set and costume design in The Substance are visually striking yet minimal, creating a sense of emptiness despite their bold use of primary colors. Elizabeth's yellow coat, which she wears when she goes out, symbolizes the yolk of the egg that splits into 2 at the start of the movie. Throughout the film, Elizabeth, as the original, is often dressed in primary colors, red, yellow, and blue, while Sue, as the copy, is associated with secondary colors like pink. There's a memorable scene where Elizabeth struggles with her identity as she prepares for a date, shown through her indecision between red and pink lipsticks. This is a great example of how the film uses color symbolically. Sue, in contrast, often wears snakeskin bodysuits or robes with dragon patterns, symbolizing a reptile shedding its old skin and emerging anew.
I won't be out late, so I'm just waiting.
The Substance is far from a perfect film. The tragic ending is predictable from the very start. The gender conflict is portrayed in a one-dimensional way that can feel uncomfortable. The message is somewhat cliché, and the ending is disturbingly brutal. Plus, if you really wanted to, you could poke a lot of holes in the plot. But if a friend asked me about it, I would still recommend it without hesitation. That's because the film offers a unique kind of thrill that far outweighs all its flaws. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to hit like and subscribe.